Discover buried treasure. Discover fun at Cave of the Mounds. See this geologic wonder that was hidden for ages. And this is not a tight squeeze. The first room is 300 feet long and has a 30-foot ceiling. Plus, it's a comfortable 50 degrees every day. Daily guided tours pass a stunning array of colorful crystal formations on paved lighted walkways. Above-ground activities include our gemstone mine, butterfly gardens, and amazing rock and fossil gift shop. Cave of the Mounds, just 25 miles west of Madison.
The Blue Mounds have long been landmarks of southern Wisconsin, beacons for Native Americans and for the early fur traders and lead miners. During the lead rush of 1828, Ebenezer Brigham came to the Blue Mounds. He had journeyed far, all the way from Massachusetts, down the Ohio River to the handful of houses that were St. Louis. After traveling up the Mississippi to Galena, he walked northeast, one of the many miners in quest of lead. Ebenezer Brigham found what he was looking for in Blue Mounds.
Cave of the Mounds is named for its location here in the south slope of the East Blue Mounds. The Blue Mounds are actually remnants of ancient mountains, the highest point in southern Wisconsin. In 1828, Ebenezer Brigham made Blue Mounds, Wisconsin his home. This made him the first permanent settler in southern Wisconsin. Ebenezer came to the state from Massachusetts to join Wisconsin's lead run in the late 1820s. When Ebenezer set up a lead mine, he also built his own home, which became a trading post, stagecoach stop, and eventually Dane County's first post office. Ebenezer lived a long life on this Brigham farm, never realizing that a greater discovery than lead lay just beneath his feet. It was during a routine quarry blast on August 4th, 1939, the Cave of the Mounds was accidentally discovered.
As Lance Dodge and Wayne Lampman drilled the final hole and loaded it with 1,600 pounds of dynamite that fateful August day in 1939, something wasn't right. They were blasting rock at a quarry near Blue Mounds. Lance's brother remembers.
We were drilling, and all of a sudden the bottom just dropped out.
It was kind of scary because it sounded like glass was falling down. We all took cover, and then we were all pretty well, we were pretty surprised when this thing blew open.
Jacobson, then a 15-year-old truck driver, is seen here standing next to the hole uncovered by the blast. His friend, 23-year-old Sandy Clevin, couldn't believe his eyes.
It looked like it was a pretty big opening. But then you could hear the stalactites fall. It sounded like glass breaking in there.
We knew there was a cave in here somewhere, and of course, maybe there's more of it.
As soon as it got blasted over with, and it seemed like I was crawling in there. Beautiful in there. Just something out of this world.
The part that unnerved me the most, well, you were going by flashlight for one thing, and you didn't know when you'd hit a drop off. You could keep yourself, if you had any sense, you could keep from getting stuck. You didn't know, when you were suddenly going to come on water that you couldn't cross or a cliff that you couldn't go down.
Word spread quickly about this amazing discovery. Geologists advised the Brighams to seal the entrance until preparations could be made to protect this geologic treasure.
There were things to do, rocks to clear away, wooden walks and stairways to build. And if visitors were coming, the cave needed lights, illumination, to show the beauty that had been buried for so long. Finally, on Memorial Day weekend in 1940, Cave of the Mounds was opened to the public.
We knew that it was something that people would want to come and see, and that it should be developed.
When it comes to natural phenomena, I can't think of another thing that has been discovered in Wisconsin since 1939 begins to have this impact.
Lucille Breckler, now 86, remembers the first risky days of one of Wisconsin's bigger tourist attractions.
They took their wives out there and took us in before, when you had to climb over all of this and just watch your step and everything. And we okayed it. We didn't know what was going to happen.
The Breckler and the Hahnemann families saw 100,000 visitors a year trudge through the cave in the next 30 years. The kids served as guides, even posed for postcards.
It was a lot of work. We all worked hard, both the children and all the both families. They all worked there at different times. We had many wonderful people who worked for us.
Elizabeth Brigham Rooney, now owner, she was 15 when the cave was discovered.
We do feel like caretakers of this place, rather than, it isn't something you can't possess something like this.
Say, going to Wisconsin on your vacation? Be sure to visit the beautiful Cave of the Mounds, Wisconsin's newest natural wonder. Just 25 miles from Madison, Cave of the Mounds includes 14 rooms of colorful beauty, including the Island Room, Gem Room Sentinel, the Mirror Pool. A prehistoric fairyland, Cave of the Mounds is one of the outstanding tourist attractions of the Midwest. And you and your family will want to plan to spend an entire day there with its perfect picnic accommodations. Make the Cave of the Mounds the highlight of your Wisconsin vacation trip. Now remember, Cave of the Mounds, just 25 miles from Madison at Blue Mounds, Wisconsin. Take highways 18 and 151 to Blue Mounds, home of the Cave of the Mounds.
The Cave of the Mounds is located on the Brigham Farm, the oldest farm in Dane County, having been settled by Ebenezer Brigham in 1823. Although the cave was formed millions of years ago, it was only discovered in 1939 when a dynamite blast at the stone quarry which lies above it created an entrance. Soon after its discovery, the cave was leased to two local businessmen who developed the cave with walkways and an entrance house and gift shop. In 1972, Edwin and Elizabeth Rooney took over the operation of the cave and began plans for its further development. Elizabeth Rooney is a Brigham daughter and has close ties to the land which her family has owned and worked for the last century and a half, a factor which weighs heavily in the shaping of the Rooney's philosophy for the development of the cave.
I grew up here as a child and went to school in Blue Mounds and in Madison. I often think of that in connection in this place. The idea is to share the beauty without wrecking it.
The heart of the Rooney's concern for the land is, of course, the cave itself. Tours depart from the gift shop, which is also the cave entrance,
But there are just a few things we always ask of everyone before we go in. The most important thing we ask is that you don't touch any of the formations along the way.
The Rooneys believe strongly that the cave tour should be informative as well as fun. Ann Baderick is a geologist whom the Rooneys hired to help with the educational coordination of the Cave of the Mounds programs.
When the Rooneys took over the operation of the Cave of the Mounds about 7 years ago, they decided that they wanted to maximize the educational potential of this cave and of Brigham Farm. Our approach is not to tell people what they see in these lovely formations. We ask them to use their imagination and ask them to come up with what they think it might look like to them, but we're always sure to tell them what it really is, what the scientific and the natural process is that form these wonderful formations.
The Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra is performed in the small amphitheater, even though Elizabeth Rooney says they had to contend with bird songs at first. And the local production of the Song of Norway is performed there as well.
Every summer, the music of Edvard Grieg and the Song of Norway transform the hills of southwestern Wisconsin. Beginning the last Saturday in June through each Saturday in July, you and your family can enjoy a picnic at the Cave of the Mounds, then a performance of the Song of Norway. Discover a bit of Norway right here in Wisconsin.
Nina, can you hear it?
Hear what, Edvard?
The music.
You mean the music of the wind in the trees?
Strange music in my ears. Only now, as you spoke, did it start. Strange music of the seas. To this lovely hum be coming from my heart. And I hear songs sublime, song that I incapable of. So dear, let me hold you near, while we treasure every measure, so that time can never change the strange music of
Strange music in my ears. Only now, as you spoke, did it
love. Nina, will you marry me?
Yes, Edvard.
Nina, oh darling, to think that we've just found each other. Now, I must ask your parents' consent.
I've already asked them.
What? What did they say?
That you were a nobody, had nothing, and all you do is write songs nobody cares to listen to.
Oh, perhaps they're right.
But I want to hear them, Edvard. I don't think you're a nobody. I think you're a very, very great man. I love you, Edvard Grieg.
Strange music in my ears. Only now, as you spoke, did it start. Strange music of the spheres. I hear angels for the lovely hum that's coming from my heart. You appear, and I hear songs sublime, sung that I'm incapable of, but you have found it, dear, let me hold you near. Why we treasure every measure, so that time can never change the strange music of Nina, can you hear it?
Hear what, Edvard?
The music.
You mean the music of the wind in the trees. The summer winds are sighing.
Not the winds, not winds, but magic violins are all around you. I can hear the chords resound of burning brass that seems to say, I found you. I found you. I found you. Strange music in my ears. Only now, as you spoke, did it start. Strange music of the spheres. To this lovely hum be coming from my heart. You appear, and I hear songs sublime, sung that I'm incapable of. So dear, let me hold you near, while we treasure every measure, so that time can never change the strange music of love.
Strange music in my ears. Only now, as you spoke, did it start.
Nina, will you marry me?
Yes, Edvard.
Nina, oh darling, to think that we've just found each other. Now, I must ask your parents' consent.
I've already asked them.
What? What did they say?
That you were a nobody, had nothing, and all you do is write songs nobody cares to listen to.
Oh, perhaps they're right.
But I want to hear them, Edvard. I don't think you're a nobody. I think you're a very, very great man. I love you, Edvard Grieg.
Strange music in my ears. Only now as you spoke, did it start. Strange music of the sphere. I hear angels hum.
All in all, the Cave of the Mounds is something of an experiment. The Roonies admit that what they're trying to do doesn't necessarily fit into the traditional mold, that what they feel is important may not be commercially viable. Somehow, though, one can't ignore their sincerity and quiet determination to make the Cave of the Mounds a unique experience and a place that is at peace rather than at odds with itself.
Man is not weightless here, though corridors of stillness capture eeriness of space. Nor is there sign of life as we explore a sweep that counterparts the open face of Earth. Immobile cirrus and hurricane on rock horizon. Falls of rippled stone. The casks of jewels where meteorites have lain might be Niobe's tears. On quartzite throne, the lifeline drips a silence in sculptured rain. All subterranes recall antiquities, where trolls enticed Peer Gynt to Mountain King, or Faustus grappled with Mephistopheles, of Alberic forging the magic Rheingold ring, our Aida's wish to die with Radames. This cave was old before Demosthenes spoke. Each layered mineral testifies an age in backdrop veins, like Joseph's envied cloak. Other dimensions science yet must gauge. When alphabet and lens record its scope, entering, let reflection mute the sage.
My name is Joe Klimzak, and along with my wife Ann Westcott, it has been our great privilege and honor to have a little tiny fraction of a time slice here in the overall history of Cave of the Mounds. We've been here for about the past 16 years, and it is our pleasure to welcome you today, and thank you so much for being here for our 75th anniversary celebration. 75 years ago today, general public tourists first got to see the cave and that wonder that a lot of you saw many hundreds, if not thousands of times when you were tour guides here. So we are very honored that you would come back and spend some time with us today to help us celebrate. So thank you very much for that.
As I think back, one of the things I just learned recently is that at the time this barn was built in 1883, it was at the same time that the railroad was being built. And apparently my great-grandfather took the money from the sale of the white oak trees over here to make timber ties for the railroad that the railroad needed, and used the money to build this barn. And of course he used some of that same oak timber in making this. And jumping forward to that famous day of August 4th, 1939, this space was full of hay, of course. And my grandfather, 77 years old, was resting comfortably in the front porch of the farmhouse at the top of the hill. And of course, this giant explosion went off. And shortly after, my Uncle Charles, who at that time would be like 19 or 17 years old, goes running up the hill saying, "Father, Father, your fortune is made." Because he had a hard time. He farmed with horses all of his life. Depression was hard. In fact, he platted a bunch of what's now Brigham Park. You look in the old plat maps, the county plat maps, you'll see all these little lots, which is Brigham Park. And he was trying to sell them just to keep the place, keep from losing it. And he was a retired farmer at that point, and thanks to the leadership and the hard work of the Breckler and Hahnemann families and advice from people like Alonzo Pond, he got this place going. And then thanks to all the skilled interpretation and hard work that you've put in over the years, we've made a legacy and a name which keeps bringing people back year after year. So.
Hi, I'm Jane Burns, and I'm here on behalf of the Historical Society. And I wasn't a guide, so I don't have a guide voice, so I'm using the microphone. Although my teachers always told me that my voice carried more than the other kids in the class, so I probably would have been okay. I'm pleased to introduce this panel. They're among many people in the community, like you all, who have lived the history of this place. Shirley Martin is the daughter of Carl Breckler, who with Fred Hahnemann had the idea to turn the cave into a tourist attraction that would be good for the local economy. Turns out it was a pretty good idea. She started in the family business early and worked at the cave from 1943 to 1955, and then again from 1968 to 1978. She was 8 years old when the famous blast happened.
No, that's wrong.
Okay. She wasn't going to be born again for another 30 years.
You were 10, weren't you?
Her parents hadn't even met yet. Yeah, that's it.
However old Steve was, that's what I was.
Okay.
Okay.
10.
You
Oh, I
can
thought it
correct.
was-
You can correct her when.
Yeah.
I will.
Math. You don't need it. And Steve Hopkins, sitting next to her, worked at the cave on weekends when he was in high school. He worked with Shirley, and they were high school classmates, I believe. So.
We were kindergarten classmates.
Okay. Jackie Sale, in the stripes there, worked at the cave when she was in high school, too, in the 1960s. And her husband, Rod, worked there, too. Kathy Lampman Hawkins worked as a guide at the cave in 1971. And she also has a family connection to it. Her great-grandfather, Lance Dodge, and her grandpa, Wayne Lampman, were on the road crew working at the quarry when the blast happened. And they were among the first people in the cave, along with Stacy Collins, whose daughter, Virgin, is here. And they were living on the property at the time. So this barn is just filled with history today. So. Joanne Crane worked at the cave as a summer job in the late 70s to the early 80s. And she took all those skills of hoarding people around seriously, and she's now a first-grade teacher. Jan Wilson Okeson is in her 25th year of working at the cave. She started in high school in 1988 and is now an assistant manager here.
Woo! Yeah.
And working at the cave runs in her family. Her dad, Mark Mostrom, was a tour guide here when he was in high school, I assume.
Yep.
And once upon a time, it was mostly high school kids who worked at the cave. I think that's changed a little bit since it's open year-round, but once upon a time, it was all high school kids. So a lot of these folks worked when they were in high school. What are some of the most memorable visitors or tourists that you remember, I guess? That's why they're memorable, but or any really crazy questions and things like that that you remember?
Frank Lloyd Wright.
Whoa, really?
Frank Lloyd Wright. I remember him coming with a flowing cape.
Cool.
But I must say that every Sunday after church, Mr. and Mrs. Brigham came to the cave. And that was about the only time we ever saw them, was on Sunday morning. I can't think, the man who started House on the Rock,
Alex
Jordan, he was here. I'm sure many, many more important people also, but I can't remember them.
Did you guys ever lose anybody on the tour?
Yeah,
not permanently.
You ever lose anybody on
Oh, you had to
tour?
count?
Yeah. I don't remember anybody got really lost, but sometimes when people would get, I don't think it happened that often, but maybe a little bit mixed up when the people are coming out of the North Cave and the people at the other side are going in, and you have, once in a while you get a little mix up, but I don't remember any examples of somebody being lost and not found for the rest of the day or something.
They didn't find any bones.
No.
At one time when we had so many people going through it on a day, we did stations where somebody would be, I can't even name the places anymore, but a station and the people would just walk along to the next station, to the next station. And there was, at one time, we figured out that this one couple must have stayed in the cave for at least 2.5 hours because they just went from station to station and back again, and they never came out. But that was an interesting time because there were so many people. When we had like 3,000, 4,000 people in one day, you just couldn't do them as groups.
When you got down to the end of the cave,
yeah,
you had to come back, but somewhere along the line they made that other transit so you could come out without running into the crowd coming in.
Right.
And that was a sort of a man-made or a man-developed corridor through the cave.
Tunnel. And I don't know if you ever saw that it was so high. It was never meant to be that high. They were coming from 2 different directions, and they did not meet. And that's why it's so high.
Shirley, what were some of your duties off season?
I'm sure you remember the wishing well.
Well, just a minute. Shirley, keep it next to your wall. We can't hear you back here.
This one's a little better.
You know it anyway.
This one.
That's my sister back there talking. I don't even need this.
Keep it next to your mouth.
The wishing well, all the money was brought to our house from the wishing well. And the process was to wash all the money with soap and water, put it on cookie sheets, put it in the oven and dry it, then dump it all on the dining room table and separate it, quarters, nickels, dimes, pennies. Then it was put into bags, sealed with a seal, and put on the train in Mount Horeb and sent to Chicago, to the federal building. Would you put money on a train today to Chicago? But that was our winter work. We also did postcards 10 postcards into an envelope. That was just automatically set up in our dining room, and if you had 5 minutes, you better go do postcards.
I have a question for Shirley. So nowadays we have a pretty, several pages worth of science that we teach our guides and tell them about that. And having Alonzo Pond as the first manager, and I think that was his title, and having his scientific insight in the first tours, what was some of the science and how was that taught to some of the guides? And then also, over the years we've used the word lifeline, but there aren't any other caves that use that term. It's a Cave of the Mounds nickname more than anything, I think. But how did that work for the new guides? Or what do you remember them teaching? What were the highlights of the tour?
The lifeline. Alonzo was brought in for because of archaeology and such. And he is the one that originally wrote the first cave speech, so that's how you always learned all about it. And he would go, if I'm not right, he would follow, you would have to take him through the cave before you could do a tour of your own. He was a stickler on a lot of things, and then a lot of things he really didn't care about. He was a very interesting man. But as for it's hard to think on, like
sorry.
this. You didn't warn me.
I didn't. I just thought of it.
I think most of it was all Alonzo that they learned from. Obviously, my dad had no idea about a cave. He was a banker. And Mr. Hahnemann, I'm sure, didn't know anything about a cave either. He was a band man. Yeah. Most too unlikely people to run a cave. But I thought they did very well.
They did great. We owe them a lot. That's really neat.
You told me that that your dad, Carl, and Fred arrived in Mount Orb about within a couple of days of each other.
A couple of days of each other.
They had known each other, all their ever
lives.
since.
Yes.
Yeah.
My father and Fred came to Mount Orb within 2 days of each other back in 1917 or 18, someplace in there. They had both bought land from Mr. Brigham. Mark was talking about land up by Brigham Park that had been lotted off. And both of them had bought land up there. At this point, I'm the only one that owns up there now. I'm surrounded by Brigham Park. So that, exactly how they got to be managers of Cave of the Mounds, I'm not too sure about.
I've been here for almost 17 years now, and we still get calls every single year. Are you doing the Halloween event? And we literally, we have a whole new event now, but the event that they had then, it must have been so tremendous that we still get calls and people say, I know you do this really scary Halloween event. Are you having that Halloween event this year? So it must have been impactful. So anybody who worked here at the time, I would love to hear about how, if they know, how did that get going and what that was about.
Mark, I don't know what the connection was, but somebody knew someone in theater from Wisconsin, from the university.
Yeah, my dad knew Gilbert Helmsley, and he was a world-famous lighting designer and professor of lighting and theater at UW. And he was, my parents hired him to do the new lighting. And I think after that, then they used the connection. I do remember the tour itself was wild, and ultimately it got a little out of hand. Some young lady got pushed really hard and knocked her front teeth out. We said, that's too far.
It was actually, I believe, Randy Swigum, and it was near how
He lost his tooth.
He lost his tooth. No, he lost his tooth because somebody got startled. Okay. Let me back up just a little bit. For Halloween and this connection to the theater, they had some professionals come out. They did our makeup, they did our costuming, they told us where to stand, what to do. The whole was very well done. They emptied all of the glass cases in the shop, every one of those, full of jewelry, full of everything, took it all out. They had, for instance, a lady from the university in white paint. She was supposed to look like a corpse. She was in an old wedding dress. She laid in there, pretended she was dead, and then she owned a live tarantula. And the tarantula, they'd have to take it out of its box, and she'd get positioned in there. They'd have to put the tarantula in there. It would crawl all over her during the people waiting to go into the cave. And then every now and then she'd shift and look at someone. And the idea was to scare people. We had glow lights. She broke them, and that's the only source of light that they used during this tour. And so I'm almost sure it was Randy Swigum. He was in a gargoyle kind of thing, and people would get really close to your mask because they weren't sure if you were real or not, so they'd try and see. And you'd get pretty good at it, and then you'd scare them when they thought they'd figured it out. Well, I think he did that. Someone pushed him. He broke off at least one, if not both front teeth. It was a weekend, and we had the high school musical, and he was a lead. Am I right, Lisa? Is that right? yeah, and he was a lead. He did make it, but he had to go into emergency surgery to figure out how to, over the weekend, call the dentist and how to get the nerves whatever they did, I don't know, but they went on with the show. But it was really popular, super, super popular, and it was, except for a little mishap like that, big to Randy, it was very successful, extremely successful.
Yeah, I brought a DVD that I had made. I had a video of TV coverage from the 50th anniversary of the discovery, and it's from all 3 TV stations.
One of Wisconsin's more popular tourist attractions is 50 years old today. Actually, the Cave of the Mounds is millions of years old, but it's only been since 1939 that people have known about it. And deep in the shadows of the cave is our very own spelunker, Scott Klug. Scott, have you figured out the difference between a stalactite?
We put it all together. It's about 8 minutes long.
I won't tell you to the very end what it means. It may be warm where you are. It may be warm where Patty is back in the studio, but down here it's very, very comfortable, 45 degrees below the ground. It's 50 degrees here in the Cave of the Mounds, the same temperature it is year-round. Right behind me, you can see one of the formations known as the Painted Waterfall. Now, that formation and these stalactites and stalagmites have been here for millions of years, but it wasn't until a quarry accident in 1939 that people got a chance to peek into this deep, dark, mysterious world. A flashlight tour is the way they used to do it here when the cave first opened up in the 1940s. A thin beam of light shimmers across the formations of the cave. No vampire bats here, no Batmobile, just millions of years of geologic history. This is how it looked when the cave first opened for business. No lights and no sidewalks. One of the biggest oops in the tourism business, when a quarry blast ripped open a hole in the limestone formation. Lucille Breckler, now 86, remembers the first risky days of one of Wisconsin's bigger tourist attractions.
They took their wives out there and took us in before, when you had to climb over all of this and just watch your step and everything. And we okayed it. We didn't know what was going to happen.
The Breckler and the Hahnemann families saw 100,000 visitors a year trudge through the cave in the next 30 years. The kids served as guides, even posed for postcards.
It was a lot of work. We all worked hard, both the children and all the family, both families. They all worked there at different times. We had many wonderful people who worked for us.
Today there was a celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Cave of the Mounds. Tomorrow, 5 decades of guides will gather for another reunion. Quite a celebration for what was, in all honesty, a mining accident. Now, perhaps within several hundred yards of me or within several miles of me are more caves. That's what some geologists think. In fact, in the next couple of weeks, UW geologists will be doing some testing. In the meantime, who knows for how long those caves will go undiscovered, perhaps until there's another quarry accident, or perhaps until Steven Spielberg needs a plot for his next Indiana Jones movie. Live, inside, deep dark under the ground in the Cave of the Mounds, I'm Scott Klug. Patty?
He still hasn't told us the difference between a stalagmite and a tite.
It was a lot of luck and 16 tons of dynamite that brought one of Wisconsin's greatest wonders to our attention. Today, they held a birthday party for the Cave of the Mounds. 50 years ago, quarry workers were blasting limestone for U.S. Highway 18151 when they uncovered the cave. At 6 o'clock tonight, Joe Champ talks to several people who witnessed the event and recall the effect it had on their young lives.
I like the Cave of the
Mounds. It is a neat
Mounds. And as Janann Yasri reports, today's anniversary brought together the first people who crawled into the cavern's cool history.
Like today, it was hot and sultry here 50 years ago when highway crews blasted this farmland with more than a ton of dynamite.
It was kind of scary because it sounded like glass was falling down.
Sanford Cleven was 23 years old then and working on the site to excavate road gravel. Like Stacy Collins, who was 40 and lived down the road, he couldn't believe what they found.
We knew there was a cave in here somewhere, and of course maybe there's more of it.
Cleven and Collins were among dozens who gathered at the Cave of the Mounds today to celebrate that mysterious finding and to celebrate the memories that linger for many, especially for Elizabeth Brigham Rooney, now owner. She was 15 when the cave was discovered.
The part that unnerved me the most, well, you were going by flashlight for one thing, and you didn't know when you'd hit a drop off. You could keep yourself, if you had any sense, you could keep from getting stuck. You didn't know, when you were suddenly going to come on water that you couldn't cross or a cliff that you couldn't go down.
Rooney grew up on this property and crawled the cavern the rest of the summer of '39. Her father invited Mount Horeb developers to open the cave for business the following spring, and since, the Cave of the Mounds has hosted more than 5 million. Last year, the 50-degree caverns were named a National Natural Landmark by the Department of the Interior. And while it is one of southwestern Wisconsin's most successful attractions, Rooney considers her interest as owner more than economic.
We do feel like caretakers of this place, rather than, it isn't something you can't possess something like this,
Shanann Yasseri, News Scene 15, Blue Mounds.
But they never dreamed that it would blast into view one of Wisconsin's greatest natural wonders. At a birthday party today for the Cave of the Mounds, we talked to several who witnessed the explosive genesis. Here's more from News 3's Joe Champ.
As Lance Dodge and Wayne Lampman drilled the final hole and loaded it with 1,600 pounds of dynamite that fateful August day in 1939, something wasn't right. They were blasting rock at a quarry near Blue Mounds. Lance's brother remembers.
We were drilling, and all of a sudden the bottom just dropped out.
Today, at the 50th birthday of the discovery of one of Wisconsin's greatest natural wonders, Dodge said they thought it was just a chasm. But with an explosion like this one, they tapped into what would soon be known as the Cave of the Mounds.
We all took cover, and then we were all pretty well, we were pretty surprised when this thing blew open.
Jacobson, then a 15-year-old truck driver, is seen here standing next to the hole uncovered by the blast. His friend, 23-year-old Sandy Clevin, couldn't believe his eyes.
It looked like it was a pretty big opening. But then you could hear the stalactites fall. It sounded like glass breaking in there.
As soon as it got blast over with, and it seemed like I was crawling in there. Beautiful in there. Just something out of this world.
Not much has changed in the cave since it was discovered 50 years ago. Tourists see the same sights that met its first explorers. Sites that might not have ever been revealed, were it not for an unusually large dynamite blast in
Ashley, and I'm going to be your virtual tour guide today down in Cave of the Mounds. But along the way, we're going to see several cave formations. The first one being a stalactite. Now these stalactites, they hang tight to the ceiling as they grow down towards the ground. So that's an easy way to remember them. Stalactites hang tight to the ceiling. Their counterpart are called stalagmites, and they start on the ground and they grow up towards the ceiling. So stalagmites might reach the ceiling someday. And if you guys are ready, we're going to go check out some of these formations. So come on. These are some of the formations that I just talked about. We've got stalactites on the ceiling that are pretty small, but we have these giant stalagmites here right along the cave trail. Now, how did these get here? And how did this cave form? Well, water from rain or melting snow soaked into the soil, and in the soil it bonded with carbon dioxide to create carbonic acid. Have you guys ever heard of carbonic acid before? Maybe some of you have, maybe some of you haven't. Well, we actually drink it all the time. It's just carbonated water, and it's in all of our pops, sodas, sparkling waters, our seltzers. And when you drink carbonic acid, it eats away at the calcium of your tooth to create a little cavity. That's why the dentist always says, don't drink soda. Well, as that carbonic acid is made naturally in the soil, it comes down through the nooks, crannies, and cracks in the limestone and slowly dissolves away the calcium of the rock, which then creates a cave. So this very cave formed exactly the same way that cavities form in your teeth. Pretty neat, huh? Let's go learn some more. So we learned how the cave formed, but how are we getting these formations? Well, that carbonic acid continues to drip into this cave today, and as it passes through the limestone that's above the cave, it slowly dissolves away the limestone, and that water droplet picks up teeny tiny little crystals that they're super hard to see with the naked eye.
And when that water droplet comes into the cave, it doesn't want to carry those crystals anymore. It wants to get rid of them. So if the water droplet hangs on the ceiling long enough, it'll leave those crystals behind, and they build up over time to create our stalactites. But if it can't hang on the ceiling long enough, it drips to the floor, leaving the crystals behind, and they build up to create our stalagmites. So you can see in this particular area of the cave, it's really drippy. So the water is not hanging on the ceiling long enough to create our stalactites, and that's why we have such big stalagmites. It's really cool. Now these crystals are so teeny tiny that it takes about 250 years to create 1 inch of cave formation. That's about the size of a marshmallow. Isn't that crazy? Can you imagine how long this took? We estimate our cave to be about 1 to 2 million years old, which is so awesome to be down inside the Earth's history right now. And a fun fact, your hair grows more in 6 hours than this cave will grow in 1 entire year. Yeah, think about that. So right behind me here, this is the bottom of a sinkhole. Have you guys ever heard of a sinkhole before? Well, let me tell you a little bit about it. It's when a cave forms underground, but it forms a little bit too close to the surface. And so if my arms are a cave, at the very top, it's getting stretched a little too thin, the surface and the ceiling can't support itself anymore, so it sinks in. So above ground, you get this big bowl-shaped depression, and below ground in the cave, you get a big pile of rocks that we like to call a collapse. Now, that probably doesn't make you feel very safe about going in a cave when I say the word collapse, but this has happened so long ago that it's completely done shifting and moving. We don't need to worry about it anymore, and we wouldn't take people down in the cave if it wasn't safe. But we get to see the remains of this sinkhole, which is so neat. Let's talk about some other cool cave formations that happen down here. If you guys look up on the ceiling, what look like tree roots coming down, those are not tree roots. That's actually a cave formation called a ribbon stalactite. And so that water is dripping in, and remember, it's carrying crystals. But instead of dripping straight down, the angle of the ceiling is just right, but the water is actually trailing down the ceiling, leaving a line of crystals behind. And it builds up over time to create what looks like ribbon glued to the ceiling. But cavers who come down in caves and they're exploring for long hours and it's grueling work, they look at that and they say, man, that reminds me of my favorite breakfast food. I'm so hungry right now. So what do you think they nicknamed it? Can anybody guess? It starts with a B and it ends in Aiken. They called it cave bacon because it looks like bacon glued to the ceiling. So I don't recommend eating it. It tastes like a rock, and it's a really cool formation that we get to see. But now, do you guys see what look like applesauce spilled over all these rocks? This is a cave formation called flowstone, and it's one of my favorites because it's a rock that's created from flowing water. Now, as the water trickles in, there's a little pool of water up at the top, and every once in a while it gets too full, and it overflows its edges and it trickles down. And as that water trickles down, it leaves those crystals behind, and they build up over time to create this blanket of rock over everything else. So we call it flowstone because not only is it created by flowing water, but it also happens to look like flowing water. If you look at it, it kind of looks like a frozen waterfall, which is really cool. And we're going to see more of that as we go along the tour. So right here, this is what we call the painted waterfall. And we're seeing more of that flowstone that I just talked about. But another cool thing about this is another sinkhole. And if you were on the surface, it would have been a bowl-shaped depression, but below ground is a big pile of rocks. And this happened so long ago that flowstone was able to come in and form over all these rocks. And remember, it takes 250 years to create 1 inch of formation. And this is covered in a very thick layer of flowstone. So this happened an extremely long time ago, and we know that it's completely done shifting and moving, and it's settled. Now, if you look up here and over to the right, you're going to see what look like little white icicles coming down. These are soda straw stalactites. And when I say that, I kind of mean like they're baby stalactites.
Not that they're young in human years, but they're young in cave years. They're just starting to form. And when they're forming like this, they're actually hollow in the middle, just like a soda straw. So that's why we call them soda straw stalactites. Over time, they're going to get bigger. They're going to take on maybe more of a cone shape that we're used to. They might even clog up in the middle with minerals. But right now, they're hollow just like a soda straw. They're really cool to check out. We'll give you a close-up in just a second. And this is a completely separate cave from Cave of the Mounds. And you need to have 3 things to be considered a cave. 1, you need to be made by nature, which it is. 2, it needs to be made of rock, which it is. And 3, it has to fit a human. Now the caveat is they never said how big that human has to be. So as long as you can fit a small child in there, it's technically considered a cave. And you could definitely fit a small child, maybe even 2 in there. So we like to call this one Surprise Cave, because surprise, you actually get to see 2 caves when you come to Cave of the Mounds, not just 1. And these minerals do something really special that I want to show you. But to do this, I'm going to have to turn the lights off. Look at how cool that is. The minerals are literally glowing in the dark. That's because these minerals are fluorescent, meaning that when you shine a black light on them, they take in that energy from the black light and they get so excited that they just don't know what to do with all this energy. So they give it right back to us in the form of light, which is what we're seeing. So these minerals are fluorescent. Whew, now the lights are back on and we can find our way out. So this is the last stop of our tour today, but I saved the best for last, because if you guys look out, this is what we call Dream River. And it's an underground river that goes back almost 300 feet, the length of a football field, to the very end of our cave. And if you look closely at the reflection of the water, it's going to show you the beautiful stalactites on the ceiling that you can't see otherwise. Now, I want to thank you guys for coming out to the cave. Even you guys come out with your families and get to explore this cave for real.
So, do you think you can guess how old Cave of the Mounds is? If you're thinking maybe thousands of years, you may want to try adding a few more zeros. That's right, Cave of the Mounds is over 1 million years old, and the limestone rock where the cave is formed is over 400 million years old, which means the rock you're about to walk through was around when the dinosaurs roamed here. Pretty cool, huh? By now, you might be wondering how a cave forms. Well, to learn that, we have to take another trip back in time, but instead of human time, we need to go back in geologic time. Why? Because cave formation takes time, lots and lots of time, and H2O. Yep, water. If you went back in time 500 million years, you would be floating in a warm, shallow sea that covered most of North America. That sea was teeming with life. For example, the giant cephalopod is a distant ancestor of today's squid. These creatures carried massive shells that were either straight or coiled. Cephalopods ruled the shallow waters, prowling for smaller animals like the trilobite. Trilobites made their home scuttling across the sandy bottom. This giant arthropod, or bug, is Wisconsin's state fossil. These and a host of other creatures inhabited this ancient coral reef. Over time, the discarded shells of millions of these sea creatures built up layers and layers of limestone. That limestone is made up of the fossil remains of all those ancient sea creatures. If you look closely on your cave tour today, you might even see our giant cephalopod fossil. It's more than 6 feet long. So, that's how the limestone rock formed. But how did this large hole form in the rock? Well, the simple explanation is this. Rainwater, or melting snow, combined with carbon dioxide to make an acid that trickled down through cracks in the limestone, creating small cavities. Because of lead and other mineral deposits deep underground, powerful sulfuric acid formed.
This acid bubbled up through the rock, enlarging the cavities further. Next, underground streams entered, washing away sediments, until finally a large cavern formed. Today, you will see the geologic process continue. Year after year, day after day, water drips into the cave, bringing with it dissolved crystals of limestone called calcite. As these tiny particles fuse together, they form intricate and varied shapes. These are speleothems. Slender, hollow stalactites hang from the ceiling, while sturdy-looking stalagmites form statues on the floor. Speleothems come in many shapes and colors. Cave of the Mounds is one of Wisconsin's most unique experiences. The cave is considered one of the most beautiful caves in the upper Midwest and is commonly referred to as the jewel box of America's major caves for its variety and delicacy of formations.
If you were to describe an environment like what you have down here in this cave, you don't realize that when you're in here, how weird it is. And that the natural environment down here is total darkness, and that the geology, there's so much you can learn, not just about the cave itself, but about how Wisconsin has changed over time.
About 20 miles west of Madison, in the driftless area of southwest Wisconsin, is the Cave of the Mounds. The driftless area is otherwise known for its spectacular views and rolling hills, and the Cave of the Mounds is known to be one of the best day trips in the Midwest.
Get ready to take a trip to one of southwest Wisconsin's most beautiful and awe-inspiring natural wonders, the Cave of the Mounds. The cave is over 1 million years old and was discovered accidentally on August 4th, 1939 by some quarry workers. During the first 8 weeks of operation, over 59,000 people came to visit the cave. Since then, for over 70 years, people have come to visit the cave, and it's often referred to as the jewel box of major American caves because of its stunning array of gemstones. In 1988, the Cave of the Mounds was designated as a National Natural Landmark, and you're about to see why. Located in the heart of South Wisconsin, amongst the rolling hills, the Cave of the Mounds offers a feast for the visual senses. Connected to Wisconsin's extensive bike trail system, Cave of the Mounds is located just off the Military Ridge Bike Trail. The cave is a breathtaking wonder of Wisconsin and is a rare sight to see. We'll show you some highlights of what we saw inside the cave, including the rooms of stalactites and stalagmites, huge caverns that look to go on forever. This cave is without a doubt a great way to spend a couple of hours on your next day trip. Today, we've joined our friend and general manager of the Cave of the Mounds, Joe. I'd say Joe definitely knows one or two things about the cave.
Hi Joe, how are you doing?
Veronica, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. So what do we have here? If you could just lay this out for us.
Well, Cave of the Mounds is our local Madison geologic wonder, and the cave is more than 2 million years old, and it's located in this limestone that's more than 400 million years old. So we've got a long, long geologic history here. We have a geologic timeline where we've taken geologic history and put it in a linear form so people can go through and walk and see just how long geologic history is and how humans in the cave are kind of just that last little bit, the last couple million years ago as far as the cave formation. formation goes.
You also have like lots of gardens, butterfly gardens.
Above ground, there's a number of activities as well. There are nature trails, butterfly gardens, prairie gardens, rock gardens of every sort. And we also have a lot of fun activities. And we're standing right here in the center of our park. Behind me we have our visitor center where we have a wonderful rock and fossil displays and where we hold a lot of our school programs. Up here we've got our barn that was built in 1883 and we hold a lot of our scout programs and school programs and birthday party events up there.
And it looks like you have some panning for gold over here going on.
Exactly. So we've got a lot of fun above ground activities also. We've got our gemstone mine where kids can get a bag of mining rock and find their very own treasure, either gemstones, fossils, minerals, all kinds of wonderful rocks from all over the world. The old quarry wall, which is significant in the history of Cave of the Mounds, because Cave of the Mounds was found by accident in the bottom of this limestone quarry. So a few years ago, we scraped off 70-some years of accumulation of brush and dirt and revealed that old limestone rock that is kind of the discovery story of Cave of the Mounds. It was on August 4th, 1939 that quarry workers accidentally discovered the cave when they were drilling holes and making an explosion in order to make limestone gravel for the roads in the area. So they had no idea that a cave was directly underneath them and revealed this entrance by accident when this quarry blast went off in 1939. So it's neat for us to see the remnant of that old quarry wall right there behind us.
Right, and is there more limestone?
It is. This entire wall and right along behind the cave building is all that limestone. So the building that we saw from a distance is built right over that top of that entrance that they revealed to the cave.
So we just entered the cave right now, and where are we standing?
We are standing right here underneath that discovery site. So it was on August 4th, 1939, that quarry blast that revealed an entrance to this cave by accident. And you can imagine how astonished those quarry workers would have been when they lowered themselves down and saw this scene that we've got behind us here, to see this vast cavern, you know, several hundred feet long, 30 feet high, 30 feet wide, this massive hole in the ground that they were working directly over in this limestone quarry for all these years. And here this was below their feet and no one knew it.
It's beautiful.
Well, what do you think? Are you up for heading further down into the cave, Veronica?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
So what kind of formations do we have going on here, Joe?
This is called flowstone. When the calcite forms on a slope, like we see in front of us here, it drips down and deposits that calcite, and the formation that results kind of looks like a big glacier coming towards us, doesn't it?
It does.
It's called flowstone. And then if you look on the big sloping rock up towards the top there,
what is that?
That's called cave bacon, or called a ribbon stalactite.
Okay.
So cave explorers are always hungry. They name a lot of formations after kinds of food.
You know, talking about food, this almost looks like a body of caramel flowing down. I want to almost lick it. I'm sure it doesn't taste good.
It's got a lot of sand mixed up. It would be kind of rough, although it looks smooth and icy, but it is, you know, the cave is 50 degrees every day of the year. So, you know, you look at it and it looks like it's a frozen water sitting there, but it is not frozen, of course, because it's that same temperature every day of the year. So that natural air conditioning that we're enjoying today is natural heating in the wintertime. It feels really balmy in here if we're in the winter with that constant 50 degrees.
And I just saw some drips down.
Some water.
Where's that coming from?
Even as dry as it is right now, we still always have water flowing through the ground. So there's little cracks in this limestone rock, and water is, you know, gradually flowing through there, dissolving little bits of that limestone and bringing it into the cave. And those drips, when it lands on your head, they call that a cave kiss.
Oh, and so how deep are we?
Right here we are 40 feet below the surface is where we are right now. And the deepest part of the cave is that we visit is 70 feet below the surface. So on the tour, there's about 2/3 of a mile of trail. It's all paved trail with lighting and hand railing throughout. So it's something that just about anyone can do.
So are you still looking for more areas, undiscovered areas within the cave?
We know that the water table is about 250 to 300 feet below our feet. And that water gets down there somehow, either through lots of small little holes or one big hole. So if it's a big hole, we call that a cave, and we're hoping that there's some more of that. We do some exploration in the wintertime when we don't have as many visitors. We're open all year round, but there's times when it's slower, and we'll do some of that exploration. And we have found more passageway heading down to those lower levels, and we're hoping that we find another big room like this. But so far it's small muddy crawlways and not.
Oh, so
not
you
big passageways.
you have found some?
We have done some, not major passageways, but the places where we could see that there's further, something else in the distance, but we have to dig out the dirt so that we can actually get through there, because right now it's only about 6 inches. 6 inches
Tiny.
of the passage, and that's I'm bigger than that. Let's go down this way. So this is called our painted waterfall. So you can see the water dripping in on top, and again, that's what brings the minerals into the cave and makes these formations. And when it comes in, it brings a little bit of iron oxide, a little bit of manganese, and that gives the formations these wonderful other colors that you see. And then we've got a reflecting pool down below, which is pure water that's dripped into the cave year after year after year. And you can see the reflection of all of those formations in the pools that go back several hundred feet until it gets to a really tiny little passageway at the end. So the cave kind of comes to an end, and we know that there's more cave beyond that, and it's completely separate from this cave, but we haven't tunneled into that yet because it's so delicate. The formations back there are soda straw stalactites, and they are extremely fragile. So we really don't go back there except for changing light bulbs very rarely. And but you can see from here just that wonderful reflection of the formations in those water pools down below.
At a year-round temperature of 50 degrees, the cave is a great way to beat the Wisconsin heat. Now I know why Joe likes to spend all of his time down here. Joe and his tour guide Annika personally escort us through the cave. There's nothing dangerous down here, but we're making sure to watch our step.
Yes, these are soda straws, and they're the very beginnings of stalactites. They'll all start out like this, and they have the name soda straw because not only are they long and skinny as you can see, but they're actually hollow in the middle. The calcite that all formations are made out of wants to deposit on the outside of the droplet. So you can see, if you look at any kind of end on, they're actually a little hole.
One of the most prevalent minerals you'll see is calcite, which is white in color. Calcite is limestone, which has been dissolved and redeposited.
And so I see there's water here. Where is this water coming from? All the water in the cave comes from the surface. We don't have a constant stream flowing through the cave. It all comes from rainwater. So when it's drier on the surface, like it was in the summer and a little bit of drought, it does get drier in the cave. And same thing when it's very wet out, it gets a lot wetter down here.
The different colors in the formations are caused by various minerals which are present in the cave. You might be familiar with the reddish-brown colors if you're one for not washing your car. Yep, that's iron oxide, better known as rust. Various shades of black, purple, blue, and gray are present because of the manganese oxide. The cave is at various depths. We make sure to pay close attention to the red light. It winds 70 feet below the surface. At the north end, you'll be at around 57 feet. At the south end, it's 42 feet below the surface, so be sure to wear your most comfortable walking shoes.
Our own particular holiday, which is the anniversary of the cave, or Discovery Days on August 4th. Those are always busy times for us.
What happens during the Discovery Days?
Well, we have kind of a special tour. We would actually take this first walk that you see here. We would take that with flashlights and kind of simulate how you would actually walk through the cave if you were one of the first explorers down here. So it's really exciting. Everyone gets a flashlight and you can explore the cave as they did in the first place.
Once you're done with the cave tour, there's also plenty to do above ground.
I'm here in the Rain and Butterfly Gardens, and although it's been unseasonably dry this year, if you come in early spring or late fall, you'll find an incredible assortment of blooms among the countless rock formations that are found naturally in the area. So if you are into nature, then this is the place for you.
I decided to test my luck at the old-fashioned mining sleuths.
We're going to get a quick demonstration from Joe here on how to mine for gems.
You can become a mining professional here.
Okay.
Have you give this a try.
All right.
We're going to put the sand inside here. You turn the tray sideways, lower it down into the water.
Okay.
And wash away your sand and see what sort of treasure you're left with.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Look at this.
Oh, is this gold?
This is called fool's gold.
Fool's
That's
gold.
fool's gold.
Okay.
You've got a piece of amethyst crystal.
Ah.
That looks like a diamond, doesn't it? That's
Okay.
a diamond.
Yeah, exactly. That
would be good.
I could use some more bling.
There you are.
Beautiful. How about this blue one right here?
That is called blue apatite.
Okay. Looks like we got a couple of blue apatites here.
We have a ruby.
Mm-hmm.
There's some garnet in here.
Okay.
There's a piece of emerald. This is Wausau red granite. That's our state rock.
Oh, that's beautiful. What's this one right here?
This is called raspberry quartz. That's raspberry quartz, another kind of quartz. Some neat treasures.
Nice. Struck it rich here.
You get to take them home and start your very own collection.
Beautiful. How fun. This is a great activity for kids.
It is, and they actually wind up learning something too. Now I get to
take this home.
You can make some jewelry.
Woohoo!
There you are. There's no real gold.
Only fool's gold.
Fool's gold.
When you get done with the cave tours, be sure to take some time and check out the trails. They are beautiful.
There are 2 trails that loop around the surrounding grounds. They each take about 30 minutes at a light walk. The first trail is the Karst View Trail. And the Prairie Demonstration Gardens. The second trail is the Oak Valley Loop. This trail goes down into the woodland and savanna. Some of the oaks are estimated to be over 200 years old. Different species of bur oak, white oak, red, and black oak are all featured in this trail. There are definitely signs of wildlife out here. Nothing more dangerous than a sinkhole, though.
The area is spotted with sinkholes, and this particular sinkhole is called the North End Sink. Basically, a sinkhole is evidence that a cave, which is close to the surface, is right below.
After you visit outside the cave, stop by the gift shop for a souvenir.
We try to make this as educational as we can. You know, in the cave world, we say it's a mystery of nature. The caves are always found directly below gift shops. So we do exit out into this gift shop, but we try to make the items in here, of course, they're beautiful things from Mother Nature, but at the same time, there's really fun stories behind either.
It looks like you have some bits and pieces of information with all the rocks here.
So we have little informational cards that go along with a variety of minerals and gems and fossils that we have in here, so people can not only take home a remembrance of their trip, but they can also take home a little information so they can learn something about
So
it.
tell me something fun.
Something fun. Something fun. These little nodules, these are called septarian nodules, and they call it that because they always form where they have these points, and they have, sept is 7, so they always have 7 points. So these right here are kind of neat in that they when they form, for whatever reason, there's that 7-pointed structure to it. So then when they cut them and polish them, that's what you see. And it's another one of these where if you were to find it lying on the ground, it wouldn't look like much. Yep. But inside, they really look quite wonderful.
And what about these right here?
These
always
are
wondered what
salt
those were.
lamps. These are from Pakistan and from the Himalaya. This is natural salt deposits mixed up with a little bit of iron oxide that gives it that orangish color. And that, you know, and then they put a hole in it or put a light bulb in there and make lamps out of them.
Beautiful.
So here's some more items. These are some of the fish fossils. These actually come from Wyoming. And you can see they prepped them, and it's amazing to think this 35 million years ago, this guy was swimming in a shallow sea over there in Wyoming, what's today Wyoming. And then layer upon layer of the rock has compressed it and preserved it for all of these 35 million years. So
You can actually see the scales for this one.
You can, isn't it something? Look at the tiny little bones. And we've got, again, hundreds of different kinds of fossils and specimens that we've got available here for people to either take home with them or just read about and learn about while they're here.
I even got a lesson on how to crack open a geode.
So why don't you pick one out, Veronica?
Okay.
See you there. Pick out a nice round one here.
How about this one?
That looks great.
Good.
That looks fantastic.
All right.
Now, it looks like an ordinary rock on the outside. You wouldn't think that there's anything terribly special about this if you just found this out in the driveway or something. But you'll see that inside there are some crystal formations. So we use my handy geode cracker here to see what's inside this one. Oh yes, I think we will be. So, of course, no one has ever seen inside this rock. Let's hope there's something in there.
Oh, beautiful.
Ooh, look at that.
Look at that.
Never before revealed.
Gorgeous. Looks
Aren't
like
those
diamonds.
beautiful? It does. Those are quartz crystals. Aren't those neat? Look at that. Pretty amazing, huh?
Beautiful.
Now, would you have guessed looking at the outside?
Never.
Would you guess that there's something in there like that?
Not in a million years.
Very nice.
Welcome to Cave of the Mounds.
It's really neat that we have a cave like Cave of the Mounds here in Wisconsin, where it's a place close by where we can go and see the wonder that the natural world can provide for us.
This is a great place. I mean, if we could bring our kids here every year, they would just love it. It's just a great opportunity to bring them outdoors and they can actually see what they've been learning in the classroom.
They learn about how caves are formed, and something that a lot of them don't get a chance to experience inside the classroom, so it's a really good chance for them to get out and experience science in the real world.
It's like an outdoor classroom.
The Cave of the Mounds offers so much more than just a cave tour. Fill your pockets with treasure at the Quarry's Edge Gemstone Mine. We offer an interpretive trail system that winds through our karst natural areas. Whether you are planning a family vacation, a school field trip, club outing, or other special event, Cave of the Mounds offers you the unique ability to witness the beauty of southwest Wisconsin both above and below ground.
Video start.
Cheer from everywhere, filling the air. Oh, how they come.
the wonderful acoustics in here because of the shape of the ceiling and the rock and just a happy mystery of nature. This is our 6th year now having Caroling in the Cave concerts. So we thought, what a great way to have a charity event, give a chance for some local musicians to have a very unusual venue for a concert.
Jingle, 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 jingle all the way.
The first time I heard music in here, there was a group of tourists that were traveling that happened to be a singing group, and they noticed the acoustics just from the tour guide talking, myself, and did a little impromptu concert, one in the back passageways, and we thought, wow. Having the big voices really resonate. It's just a wonderful natural cathedral we've got here underground. The Grand Canyon from outer space, but Cave of the Mounds was completely sealed until 1939. No one ever knew it was here, so we've got these natural geologic wonder, and yet it's completely hidden to the eye unless you know where to look.
Step into a holiday wonderland this December with our much-awaited Holiday Lights event, Cave of Lights. Explore Cave of the Mounds like never before, with sparkling lights leading you through the amazing underground pathways. The lights will be on every cave tour all of December. And this is not a tight squeeze. The first room is 300 feet long and has a 30-foot ceiling. Plus, Cave of the Mounds is a comfortable 50 degrees every day. Daily tours pass a stunning array of colorful crystal formations on paved walkways. Cave of the Mounds, just 25 miles west of Madison.
Want to experience the cave in a whole new light? Come and rent a black light flashlight to take with you on your cave tour. Watch our stalactites, stalagmites, and other cave formations fluoresce under the glow of a black light. How is this possible, you may ask? Well, let me explain. Black lights emit ultraviolet or UV light. Most of us have heard of this, but what is ultraviolet light? Well, what we can see with our eyes is called visible light, aka Roy G. Biv, which are the colors of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. However, there is a light that is redder than red that we cannot see, so we call that infrared. Also, there's a violet light that is more violet than what our eyes can see, so we call that ultraviolet light, or UV light. Since UV light is invisible, we call the bulbs that produce the black lights black. The ultraviolet light from the black lights excites the electrons in the mineral calcite, the main mineral in all of our cave formations. When the excited electrons fall back to their natural state, they give off energy in the form of light that we can see. This ability to absorb light and instantly release light back in a different wavelength, visible light, is a process called fluorescence. Cave formations like stalactites, stalagmites, flowstone, and others are mainly made up of a mineral calcite. With the addition of varying amounts of manganese and iron, fluorescence in minerals typically occurs when certain impurities, known as activators, are present. Manganese will help activate the calcite in the formations, causing it to fluoresce. This is common among many of the formations in the Cave of the Mounds. However, iron minerals are also present, which act as inhibitors to fluorescence. This is why certain parts of Cave of the Mounds fluoresce better than others. Not all minerals will fluoresce. In fact, only about 15% of minerals have a fluorescence that is visible to people, and some specimens of those minerals won't even fluoresce. For example, pure calcite will not fluoresce. Fluorescence usually occurs when specific impurities, known as activators, are present in that mineral. rent a black light and check it out on your cave tour today.
Edwin Rooney is perhaps more than anyone the driving force behind the Cave of the Mounds. His touch is best seen in the development that is peripheral to the actual cave. He's very proud, for example, of the nature trail, which has just been refurbished. I asked him if there wasn't any pressure to do things differently.
Yes, a kind of inward pressure in that I don't think there's a great deal of money to be gotten from developing trails like this. Nothing like the kind of money that you could develop or make if you put in a ride of some sort, even if it was just a merry-go-round.
Chert rock. So the terraces, there's 3 terraces above the visitor center. There's 3 terraces below the visitor center. The hardscape, meaning everything but the plants, was put in when this visitor center went in. So the visitor center was designed, conceived, and built between 1978 and 1980. And anybody who's dug anywhere in this area knows that as soon as you dig in the ground here, you come up with lots of unconsolidated chert rock, chert nodules mostly, which is what all of this rock is. So these terraces were put in when this building went in. And over the years, there's a lot of change that's happened in these terraces, but the chert rock is really our point of differentiation, the thing that other people don't have that we do have because we live here on the mounds. The chert comes from the top of the mounds. Of course, we're on the east mound, we're on the south slope of the east mound. So the top of the mounds were covered with chert, and it's just eroded downhill over these many, many years. I'm really lucky to have them. It's a wonderful rock to work with. It's just, I think, a beautiful rock for flowers, and it allows us to have these different plant communities because we have the rocks and because they're so well drained. At the top of the hill, when Joe and I started, this was all grass. It was grass here, it was grass next to the building, and this wildflower or prairie garden was started in 1998 is when the first prep of the hill began. So 98 and 99 prep years, most of 2000. In the fall of 2000, right? 2000 is when it was planted, all planted by seed. So this is this whole garden is about seed management. And Drew's been helping me with collecting some seeds. Put in the seed you want, take out the seed you don't want. And over time, it becomes this beautiful wildflower garden, which I find incredibly delightful. And just the smell alone is so wonderful. So you've noticed that the third terrace has been seeded to the wildflower garden, keeping the wildflowers, the prairie flowers, out of the rock garden is a continual process. Sometimes some get going, but I really want the seed because I don't have enough of it or feel I have enough of it in this garden. So like this purplish plant right here is really a prairie plant, but I'm gonna let it continue to grow here, collect the seed from it in the fall, not let it, hopefully, fall in this garden, put it back up in here, and just continue to plow it back in, and that's basically how it works. On the other side of the creek, as you go up toward the parking lot, everything up there is new because when we started, the parking lot was gravel and we really wanted to pave the parking lot. As a result of that paving project, the huge rock garden that backs the rain garden and part of the parking lot, that's where those rocks came from. So when they dug down to put the parking lot in, all of those rocks came in. So then we were able to sort of mimic what's going on here in that area. So we used them in that garden we call quartzite. The names are funny, I didn't do it. That garden, then at the entrance, also those rocks came from this project and everything along Cave of the Mounds Road. So when I talked about our butterfly gardens, which are all naturalized gardens here, are gardens that can support the butterfly from the time they lay the egg until the time it flies away and lays some more eggs. We have many of those here. There is a sign which describes what a butterfly garden is at our rain garden. So if people ask, this is what I tell them. All of our butterfly gardens are naturalized. If you want to read the sign, you can go up and read the sign, which is on that same walk that you took when you came down from the parking lot. Oh, right. So these are rock gardens.
Perennial gardens?
Yep, they're all perennial gardens. We do some annuals, as you know. These are all perennial gardens, so you can just call them perennial gardens. This is a prairie garden or a wildflower garden. It's not a prairie, you know, it's not big enough for that, but it's a prairie garden. We have a savanna garden, which is more like a prairie garden, but tends towards shade. That's down below the third terrace below the visitor center. They're really, savanna is what they call the areas that were in the shaded areas under the oaks. So basically, all of this, according to the original surveys, when Wisconsin was platted out, they sent people out to establish corners for township and range lines. And at that corner, they made a visual inspection of the area. So they stood at what they were going to consider the new township and range line. They looked around and they said, okay, this is what you see, these are the trees, these are the plants. And they called all of this savanna. So all of this was open, what you would consider open wildflower or prairie, tall grass and short grass areas with the flowers, punctuated by groups of oaks. Groups of oaks, groups of oaks, groups of oaks. And the plants that can handle more shade and tend to move toward the oaks are quote unquote savanna plants. Too many signs are too many signs. You know, to me it's just be here, be in the moment, look at the flowers, soak it all in, take a picture of your family, but there is some interpretation. And of course, this sign is an example of it. So throughout the area we have some signs which at least give people a little bit of an understanding of who we are and what we are. We're all of us, most of us here, I think we all live in the area, are lucky enough to live in the Driftless, one of the most beautiful areas, in my opinion, in the state, if not in the entire Midwest. And you know, the old boredom in paradise, right? People work at Yosemite and they're like, yeah, boring, saw it, done it. Grand Canyon, And so we take it so for granted that we live in this incredible area. But because this is the Driftless, that's why we have the cave. And of course, talking about how the surface and the subsurface are related is a whole nother deep conversation. But the chert rock that are here are part of what makes this area unique, and it's why the mounds are even here at all, because we live in such an ancient landscape, completely different from going out to California, for instance, where the geology is so young compared to us. It makes it exciting, and it's you know, whoa, you look at it and you're like, oh, wow, is that gonna move? Whereas you're here and you're like, stable, we're good. So we live in this ancient landscape, but as a result, we have, you know, this cave, which really is the jewel of our area. So of course the trail system, which I hope you've all walked on at least once. And we've set it up very much like a state park system, right? Where you have a map that says you are here, and then you follow along with little signs that say, you know, red trail, go this way, blue trail, go this way. So it is very much in the state park model. And, you know, anyone should easily be able to follow it with one of our maps. And then we have some of these interpretive signs along the way. The first couple of signs, I guess actually the first one was the welcome sign down there. But this really explains a lot, you can sit down if you want, a lot about how these gardens function. This whole area that's in here is a rain garden. So it's a really highly engineered garden so that it has just the right drainage properties, so that when this parking lot went in, the idea was that half of the water, more than half actually, comes down and drains into here, so that this is the way of storing whatever chemies might be coming off the parking lot from the cars, etc., and filtering that water. This garden does that. There's another large rain garden. There's a split rail fence down at the bottom there that you might see. So the other half of the parking lot drains into that rain garden. So we have two big catchment basins that catch the water that runs off of this parking lot and helps to filter it before it runs out and goes into the creek. And so they're called rain gardens for obvious reasons. They're really more, it's really more accurately a catchment basin, but they really provide an awesome opportunity to put in these kind of wildflower type plants again. And you can, they just grow marvelously in these gardens, and you can really sort of tailor it and custom it to what you want. So if you want more of the plants that butterflies need, you can put them in. But they're really fairly low maintenance, which is hard for me to say because I always tell people, no, don't get into this. They're really fairly low maintenance, and I think really beautiful. And I know that the state has really been pushing these catchment basins whenever a new neighborhood goes in, you know, depending on the size of your house and where your house is located. And I know people are sometimes reluctant, but I wouldn't be. They're really great. And oftentimes, if the catchment basin is big enough and wet enough, you get waterfowl, you get lots of frogs, you get all kinds of wildlife will be drawn to these. Being on the mound as we are, and even though you're not feeling it standing here, but we really are, we're on the slope coming down the southern mound. We're very well drained here for the most part. So we really don't get water sitting at all in here.
Well, I guess I just wanted to say a few words first. One, thank you all for being out here today. 24 hours ago, we were generating about 5% because it was a cloudy, stormy day. So here we are, blessed with a lovely sunny day in autumn here in October, where we're generating about 58 kilowatts of electricity right now on site. So just a fantastic, more power than we're using. So we're sending some back to the grid today. And of course, every time we do that, we save a little bit of carbon from the atmosphere, and we help our bottom line. And it's just been a fantastic improvement in addition to what we do at Cave of the Mounds. I love to think about it how for 2 million years the cave has been slowly growing there in the darkness. And there was that one explosive day in 1939 when it was out. It exposed the outside world and the sunshine was coming in. And now we're bringing sunshine to Cave of the Mounds again through the power of electricity that this panel array is generating for us. So, wonderful sort of metaphor, the fact that you're here in this cave in total darkness, and here the sunshine, we're able to bring it inside. So, thank you all for being here.
Light up the dark Cave of the Mounds. NBC 15's Shayna Najawan spent the morning at the Blue Mounds destination, where 2 solar panels were just installed, and they will be up and running very soon.
The new installment will reduce the cave's carbon footprint.
So the cave was discovered in 1939, an accidental discovery because it was a quarry blast.
What some refer to as the jewel box of Wisconsin. Cave of the Mounds has served as a Wisconsin destination for over 80 years. The year-round attraction sees nearly 100,000 visitors each year. And with that many tours comes thousands of dollars in electricity costs.
The cave is total darkness every day of the year. So we have an extensive lighting system in there for our visitors that come to see it. And then we have other events in the visitor center and other attractions for them in our barn and all these different visitor amenities, and all of it runs on electricity.
General Manager Joe Klimzak says their new installation could help manage some of those costs.
So to be able to generate so much power right on site here,
2 28-kilowatt solar arrays.
We'll be generating 50% of all the power we use right here on site.
The system expected to span nearly 25 years.
And of course, sunshine went into Cave of the Mounds at that time, and now we're bringing the power of the sun into Cave of the Mounds for the first time since that momentous event in 1939.
A tour of Cave of the Mounds is one of Wisconsin's most unique and authentic experiences. In fact, the United States Department of the Interior and the National Park Service have distinguished Cave of the Mounds as a national natural landmark because it is a treasure.
It makes me realize that the world is filled with amazing things. And many of those things are closer than you think. and that you might just, you know, there can be amazing things just around the corner, 100 feet away, 100 feet below ground. You know, there are all sorts of surprises out there, and you never know where, you know, as is the nature of surprises, you're not sure where they're at or where they come up, but they're out there, and this cave's one of them.
Remember the caver's motto: take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but footprints, kill nothing but time. The Cave of the Mounds offers so much more than just a cave tour. While on these park grounds, enjoy a picnic, stroll through our prairie, savanna, butterfly, and rock gardens, or hike our nature trails and witness the beauty of Southwest Wisconsin both above and below ground. It is our responsibility to protect and conserve the cave and this fragile environment.
So whether you're a curious tourist or a budding cave enthusiast, today you're going to be learning firsthand why Cave of the Mounds is truly a living underground adventure with a surprise around every corner. Enjoy your tour.